You should be all right.
Looking at it. You're on TV.
I see that all by
Welcome to part 2
myself.
of Problem Children. Is that what we're titling this?
You can
Problem
title
children.
No.
it challenging behaviors. Challenging children.
Not restraining them.
Like I said,
That's
welcome. See, we edit. That's where we edit it right here.
Yeah, that's
We'll
probably.
trim.
Take 2.
All right, so welcome part 2 of Challenging Behaviors.
Thanks for
And-
having me back.
What's that?
Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you back. I don't even think I'm in the shop, but it's awesome if I'm not. It's
I
fine.
would be great if you were.
Okay.
If it was just a little bit further back, it'd be really great.
I can turn it so you can see that if you like.
No, I do not want to see myself.
Once again,
I'll let you watch that.
once again, we can trim it right here. All right, so welcome to part 2 of Working with Children with Challenging Behaviors. It's not the challenging children, it's behaviors we're working with, trying to figure out, right?
Yes.
You got it. So tonight, is going to be more focused on, we'll do a little recap of part 1. Because part 1, we really focused on what happens, what are we receiving when a child comes into our room?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a child that we know that struggles maybe with certain behaviors or we talked a lot about, let's talk about what we talked about.
Okay. We talked a lot about the states children are in when they come in the room in the morning and when they're having challenging behaviors. So if you remember, we had the color scale basically from alert and calm to more on edge, and then all the way down to fear and triggered, or alarmed is the red. And assessing where our children are when they come in to know if we need to get them down to a calmer state, maybe before the day even starts, or just kind of knowing also where they might be operating from their brain. So we talked a little bit about different brain states and the triune brain and basically the 3 parts. So we have our, the very bottom of our brain is our survival part of our brain. It's basically asking, am I safe? Am I fed? Am I tired? Am I regulated physiologically? And then the next part of the brain is the emotional part of the brain, the limbic system. The emotional center is basically saying, am I loved? So do I feel connected to people? And then where we want our children to be in kind of this optimal zone is the frontal lobe, our executive state, where all our executive functions are. And the question from here is, what can I learn in this state? And so we really want kids in that green, alert and calm zone, working from their frontal lobe. So we talked a little bit about moving children when we have challenging behaviors from the bottom part of their brain to the upper parts of their brain. Sometimes it's called the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain. And some children who don't have well integrated brains, they basically don't have good pathways. So the parts of the brains don't talk well to each other. And for some children, the emotional center of their brain really kind of hijacks the thinking part of their brain. And so what can we do to help these children calm down so that they can access that part of their brain, so that we can help build neural pathways to that part of the brain? Really everything we're doing kind of stemming around that kind of thinking and looking at children through that lens rather than, they're just kicking me and spitting at me again and I have 17 other kids to manage. And I mean, that's the reality of that, but trying to look kind of through a different lens at what's going on.
So, if we think about when kids are first entering the room in the morning, maybe we can start with some strategies of, okay, I've got a certain kiddo coming in the room this morning. This kiddo struggles in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Here he comes. How can I help him? How can I prepare? Maybe, and I might be preparing myself on how to address, how to support him, how to help him have a successful morning. Maybe I'm sending him off to school if he's a school ager soon. So maybe it's something I need to do. Maybe we talk about that. And maybe something that maybe I need to think of in advance for my classroom. Maybe I need to have a space in my classroom, or maybe we could talk about some certain spaces in our classroom that are going to be helpful for certain kiddos with certain needs. So let's start at the beginning of our day about addressing some kiddos. So you could jump off. that
I'll jump
onto that road if you like. And again,
Please jump in.
tonight is the night where we're going to have complete involvement. So if you are planning on being an observer, any observers tonight? Because if so, you can eat your dinner and head out the door. We need involvement. So no, just kidding. But no, we want your ideas. So be thinking of things that you would like some help with. We can be all over the chart today. We can be from the beginning of the day to the end, to the middle, back to the beginning. So I think this will be just hopefully a good hour of just all kinds of great tools that are going to help you throughout your day. So, but let's just start this while everybody's thinking about ideas and scenarios with what are some ways to maybe prepare ourselves for kiddos that struggle first thing in the morning, and then before they even enter the room. We're talking, let's start with parents that are having to coax their child into the room. So let's start with transitions.
Okay.
Kids in charge. Transitions.
And just to jump off that, there's a lot of experience in this room. So my background is mental health. And while I've been in child care centers and preschools the last year, you guys have so much wealth and experience and knowledge that expands way beyond that. So I really do hope it's back and forth. So children struggling in the morning. My first inclination, and I know I kind of said this, and what I consult with teachers is we're starting at the bottom of the brain state, really, especially in the morning. The am I safe? Am I hungry? Am I tired? What was going on all night? Did they sleep well? I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last training, but I had a child who was really struggling in another center, and we started to give him Pediasure each morning, and the behaviors stopped, and he just needed those nutrients and wasn't eating well at home or until lunchtime. And so the morning was just chaos for those poor teachers. So I would start at the bottom and work my way up then to the emotional part that connected the relationship. But so am I safe? You could structure some of your environment to help the child feel safe or regulated. And a lot of that, I think, depends on the child's temperament. Are they slow to warm up? Are they a difficult temperament? Is coming into the classroom and having their friends rush up to them and hug them and all this chaos, is that too much for them? Do you know they need 5 minutes under there to just read a book and kind of slowly come out? And so part of that, I think, is obviously knowing the child too, but I would try to think of things that help them feel regulated. And then just, are they hungry? Do they feel alone? I think it's HALT. Hungry, alone, tired. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, I think. So just your basics at the beginning, especially if they're coming in kicking and screaming. You guys have time to talk to parents about how the night went. I know some parents are a little reluctant if things are going on at home to talk about those things sometimes, but then I think that's where, obviously the relationships you have with parents, where you're talking with them all the time, not just when something is bad's happening or struggling, that then they're more apt to talk to you and open up about those things.
So one of the things that when we did our Colorado Shines rating, they talked about introductions or communication in the morning, not just good morning, but about recognizing, starting some kind of conversation with regard to the well-being of their child, which ties into this. So some of that I thought, do I really have to ask a parent every morning, are they hungry, are they tired, do they feel safe?
Let's check off HALT. Just let me know how.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but knowing that child, maybe one of those questions might be good. Find something that's pertinent. Does anybody have any feedback or input with regard to maybe a success story where they had a child that might have fit into that category, that were hungry, tired, maybe didn't feel safe, and you implemented something that helped them have better success in the morning?
Olivia is one of them. She will not eat her grandma, so she'll come in and get her to eat breakfast, so she can get really tired. And I thought it was just she didn't want to play with friends, or she just transitioned from their room into mine. I thought she was just really withdrawn and wasn't transitioning well. It's that she was hungry.
Yeah.
And once Grandma told me she wasn't eating her breakfast, all I had to do was ask her, are you hungry? Do you need a snack? Because she doesn't eat lunch with us either. So by the time she gets to lunchtime and grandma picks her up, she's starving to death.
Wasn't he eating her breakfast at home or with us?
At home. She doesn't come. She comes after breakfast.
Yeah, she comes like later morning.
Yeah. So wasn't eating breakfast at home, comes at, let's say, 8:30 after breakfast is done here, and how did you problem solve that?
I asked grandma, I said, is she saying anything at home? Is something going on? Is she uncomfortable? I mean, she loves on us. She seems to be doing okay, but she was just so quiet. And some days she seemed okay, some days she didn't. She seemed really off. I just knew something was wrong. I couldn't figure it out. And I finally asked her, and she was hungry.
So did she finally start eating breakfast at home or with us?
Some days she doesn't. Grandma just tells me. She
Okay.
ate this morning. I'll ask her, did she eat or did she not? And some mornings grandma will tell me. Sometimes she forgets, and I'll just notice that she's a little lethargic. And I'll ask her, are you hungry? Or, sometimes she eats, sometimes she doesn't.
So from a center standpoint, part of that is just then troubleshooting. How do we get this kiddo some nutrients in the morning?
Yeah.
And so work with your director and find out, okay, what can we do? Do we need to help this? Do we need to find a resource to provide a meal for this child at home? Do we need to educate parents or maybe a grandparent about that? Or do we need to try to get them to come earlier? Maybe if they're with us for a full day, but they're just coming at 8:30 because it's convenient. Maybe they'll eat with us where they won't eat with home because they get here and they feel safe because they see all their friends, right? And they like this environment, or maybe
It's a
it's
social
reversed.
setting where maybe grandma is just like here, walks away, so she's
Right.
there by
She
herself.
brings it in the car, she says, and and there's some kids
It's not
that
rushed.
Yeah. There's some kids that don't eat breakfast, and I get it. I mean, I'm not a breakfast person, haven't been. I got a couple kids that are, and a couple that aren't. So I get it, but I just watch it, and it's not something that I'm going to publicize because I have some parents that will take advantage of that and be like, "Oh, I didn't feed my kids at 10 o'clock."
Yeah.
That's where you're like, we have an individual plan with this child.
So I never ever do it in front of a parent. I make sure that all my kids have already been dropped, and she is very, very seldom that I have to, but I just watch her. There's just a few days here and there. It's not been very often.
Just so everybody understands what you're saying, is you create an individualized plan for that child.
I did, yeah, and it's just I'm the one that pays attention, and if she's got a little lethargy going on, I ask her, "Are you hungry, or do you need a little bit of juice or something?" And it's just you can just see it in her face, and just kind of the way she's wandering around class a little aimlessly, or just not wanting to play or not wanting to interact. And
So
I
what do you
think
feed
that's
her?
what it is. I'll just go grab something from the kitchen. It can be string cheese or a piece of fruit or both, and I'll grab her milk or juice, whatever she wants to drink, and
We
nothing
don't do a
big.
morning snack anymore, which
No.
is kind of sad for the toddlers.
Yeah.
Because they're a challenge.
Well, the food program convinced us not to do morning snack
Right.
years ago because they said, that's
Don't eat
typically a
lunch,
less
sugar.
healthy
I can't
meal.
even go from
Yeah.
breakfast to our lunchtime without.
They told us they'll eat less lunch and be less healthy, and I don't know if we totally agree.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what they told
I
us.
So
think
the-
they would eat the same because isn't like the rule of thumb that the kids tend to pick
lot of
one
small
meal that they
meals,
fill up on
yeah.
throughout the day, whether it be breakfast or lunch or dinner. But I mean, they need a little something in between those meals to keep them going, or
Yeah.
else they'll be.
Ours
hungry.
are asking by about 10. When's lunch? I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh my god!
You have time.
Seriously, we gotta get busy because these guys got a wow. I'm like, let's go play something else.
One thing that we tried to implement that really takes part of the parents to bring it in, which we sometimes see good parent. Some years we see really good parent participation, and all families are on this, and some are not. We're kind of having that kind of a year, but at the beginning of the year, we asked parents to bring in a family photo. We put it in a photo album. We put it in our cozy corner. So when we have those sad drop-offs, we
Yeah.
tell kids, go look at your picture. And they'll go and look at their picture and
Mhm.
go put it away and go put their stuff away and be ready to start their day.
We had one kiddo that completely changed his Dropbox.
Mhm.
He would sometimes take his photo out of the album and try to put it back in his backpack, but photo album, but he doesn't need it that much anymore.
That's his effective photo.
Yeah.
But overall,
Right.
we've got
Yeah, he didn't wanna leave it.
27 on our roster, and we have about 5 photos. in our
Like
photo.
9.
Okay, 9.
We just,
Nothing close.
we just talked about doing that for a kid earlier this week at a different center because he's missing dad during the day, and he thinks that dad is doing something fun all day. And so we talked
Dad
about.
probably wishes.
Yeah, right. We said, can you take a picture of yourself behind your desk? Like, don't look like you're having too much fun. Just
Great
you're
idea, though.
working
Smile.
for him to see because they need that visual. And
Yeah.
I love that idea of having
Yeah.
family photos. We need a photo of dad working diligently.
Yeah.
Being boring, not watching movies, not doing anything fun, because he was misbehaving to say, "Are you calling my dad? Is my dad calling my dad?" And so, yeah, the pictures are
What a
great.
great idea.
Yeah.
That is a good idea.
Visuals, I love that.
Mine, I just count with my kiddos. I count to 10 or 5, depending upon the kiddo. And then once they kind of calm down off that edge, I'll ask them, do you want to read a book or do you want to do a puzzle? And I just kind of set them by themselves to let them finish coming down, and then they go on about their way.
Distractions work really well too. Like, hey, come, let me show you what we're doing today, or come
I
look at
do
this
that
new
one
toy
too.
we have in the blocks. And
Redirect.
bing, they forget exactly what they're upset about.
Especially during that transitioning time, if you have something ready, set
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
that helps a lot.
I think down upstairs in theirs, it was as much training the parents as it was the kids. This was a parenting training.
So let's talk about interactions with parents. So this morning I saw in the foyer, and you didn't want to come in yet, and mom was just like, "Are you ready yet? Can you come in? Can you want to come to class? Come on."
No.
And I walked by and I said, "Looks like," we'll call him Jameson. "Looks like Jameson's in charge this morning." And mom's like, "Yep, he is."
Oh.
And I just smiled and walked away. But let's talk about some of that communication, appropriate communication to reach parents, because they're struggling.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So, coaching parents.
Yeah, I think I actually did a training on this last May, and we talked a lot about different communication types, because kind of knowing your parents and how they communicate to me, and what communication type you are, to know how to communicate with them seems to be like the best place to start. And I'm trying to remember the 4. There was the director, the socializer, and 2 others. But basically, some parents are, give me the information now, I want it, I need it, I'm gone. And so if you're a processor, socializer, and you want to talk about all the good things before you talk about the issues, then you've lost them. And so I think sometimes knowing what kind of communicator you are and then what kind of communicator they are can help structure the conversation. For example, that parent doesn't sound like they might be a director, kind of gets the point kind
Not so
of
much.
person. And so if you went at that person like that, if you are more director's
Because
the
that would
point,
be my
that
style.
would probably
I'd
be
be
your
like,
style.
Do you see what you're doing wrong? You see what you're doing wrong here, right?
See, this is a great example.
Yeah.
Then
Like,
that's
can I
not
film
going
this
to
of you,
go well.
me talking to you? So I can show other parents what you're doing wrong, because you obviously know, right?
Yeah.
Let's get right to it.
So that's not going to go over too well. And so just knowing their communication.
And I
So-
feel like being on the other end of that, if you are communicating with someone that communicates completely different than you, like I read into it. I'm like, this parent's disinterested in what we're doing and what they're learning and what they, versus what you just said, okay, they communicate and receive information a lot differently than I do.
Yeah, some of them are more task oriented. So if you go at them with all the feelings and I love your son, he's so great, he does this, and they're like, what do you want me to do? Like, tell me, do I need to bring him in earlier? Do I need to say something different? And so, if you can kind of figure out what they're like, I think that helps, especially with parents who might be a little more difficult.
And I think too, like Dawn said, it's nice when, if there's 2 teachers in a classroom, if you have the other teacher also listening into the conversation, you can kind of have 2 different perspectives, because sometimes to one person it's going to come off completely differently. And Dawn and I see that all the time, where sometimes we have to check in with each other, like, hey, did it sound like that to you? Because to me it kind of seemed this way, and usually we're able to kind of figure it out and then talk to the parent later and make sure that we're all kind of thinking the same way and on the same page if it did come off as being a miscommunication
Right.
or something like that.
And I always seem to like gear towards those parents who do come in and they're all, they want to know, and they just seem like so much easier. So you feel like you respond to them a lot more. You have more communication with them all the time versus these other parents that you maybe communicate. They communicate differently than you do, and so I feel like I kind of do this with those parents.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
I do put off the scary ones, but eventually they're like,
Yeah.
like, okay, can you please handle the scary one? And I'm like, all right. So then I'm like, all right, I gotta go home and prepare myself.
Some of them you need a lasso for.
Yeah.
Stand still for a second. I want to talk to you. Because they're so busy throwing that child in the door out, running back out.
Yeah.
And you notice if you say, hey, can I schedule a time with you where you have 5 minutes before, they just completely
Yeah.
back up on edge.
Yeah.
But finding that time, because every parent's either busier in the morning or busier, they're late to work,
Yeah.
but that same parent is probably late to get home. So you'll notice that when they pick up at night, they're not in a hurry, So figuring out when the right time is to catch that parent, and I promise you it's not in the foyer when their child won't come into here. That's not the teaching point, right? Because that parent is just completely frustrated, maybe humiliated a little bit if they really understand what's going on, because that child really was in charge. And I was thinking, how sad.
Yeah. And then
Because she was like, yep, he is. I have no control. And I thought, how sorry for you.
Yeah.
And for him, more
and for the
importantly.
teacher that he's going to be walking into.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to be pretty either.
All right. Well, how about throwing chairs? Because we have kids that throw chairs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And they go completely out of control.
Knocking over shelves.
Let's talk about throwing chairs. Let's talk about screaming at circle time. Let's talk about I refuse to move my feet.
Yeah.
And it's time to go to school.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys transport, right?
We transport and we usher. So we have a school right next to each other, so we try to usher kiddos that sometimes plant their feet and say, I'm not moving. We're like, well, you're 6, you're in kindergarten, it's time to go to school. They have other plans.
So what is the normal, what is the normal response? Like what typically, maybe I should be asking you, is when that happens, then
Well,
what
the
do you
district
guys
looks
do?
at us and says, good luck. That's what they told my 16-year-old daughter when she went to get the child from the district who was sitting in the classroom.
Uh-huh.
The teacher looked at her and said, good luck, and walked out.
Oh.
And so ultimately the policy that we made with that school, and I won't mention that school, but they're right next door. Anyway, I talked to the vice principal. I said, listen, we're no longer going to carry children out of the classroom. So if they are not going to come with us, then they'll be your child to care for after school hours. And if they don't want to go there in the morning, then they'll be our child to care for. But we're not going to carry them to school.
Right.
With staff with bruises and scrapes and so forth. So that becomes, Shelody needs to work with the parents on that, and we will work with the parents. So last time that happened, we called mom, and she drove from Orchard Mesa here, talked to her child, took her to school, which was
Right there.
50 feet away.
Okay. So I'm just throwing stuff out here. My first thought is if they're stuck in that emotional trigger part of their brain, you want to move them to the front part. So the things that I would use, the tools I would probably use, are to name the feelings and describe what they're doing, because that helps them kind of see what's going on from a different point of view, because they're just doing it, right? They're in this emotional state of I'm not moving, you can't make me, or I'm throwing chairs. And so that might look something like, and this is probably going to sound really uncomfortable and weird and unfamiliar if you're not used to talking this way, because it's just a different way.
We're ready for unfamiliar.
Uncomfortable, different.
Please.
I see that your hands are clenched. I see you're picking up that chair and you're about to throw it because you're so mad. You don't want to go to Shelody. you don't want to leave my class, you know, and so naming what they're doing, what you see in their face, what you see going on in their body, because that also shifts them to the other part of their brain. Feelings, facial states, body, and what they're doing. And sometimes we can calm kids down too by just naming what they're doing, because again, they're having to think about what we're saying. It's shifting them into the thinking part of their brain. And so you can kind of, and it's not judgmental. So I think something you said earlier made me think this too. Conscious discipline uses Q-tip, quit taking it personal. And I think you mentioned something earlier about what can we do when we see our kids in that state.
Yeah.
We can take a deep breath. And I know that sounds really simple and easy, but we want to try to download the state we want our kids to feel by kind of making that feeling around them. So if we can take a deep breath before we even say anything, that's very helpful. And then just naming what's going on, kind of like a sportscaster. So there's no judgment to it. It's not like, oh, you're taking that chair, you're gonna throw it, don't throw it at me. It's not like you're getting really emotional and upset and reactive. You're just naming what's going on. I mean, you're probably not saying you're throwing the chair as they're throwing it, because you're probably taking the chair. That's a safety issue. But just naming what's going on for them helps move them. It's a flip it technique. It's a Devereaux Center for Resilient Children technique. It's a conscious discipline technique to, among others, Dan Siegel, Whole Brain Child, that we really want to try to get them to move into their thinking part of their brain. We do that by labeling their feelings and what's going on and what's happening. And so sometimes for kids that's enough to say, and I don't know if this is the case for that child, but you don't want to go to school. You don't want to go over there right now. You want to stay here and play with this. This is so hard. I know that it really stinks that you don't want to go and you have to. And then, but we have to leave in 5 minutes. So you can either walk backwards there or you can skip there, but those are your choices because we have to go. So trying to first label it so you're validating, then giving choices. And if you can make it playful to shift them into a playful, some kids respond well to like humor or some playfulness when they're upset, and some don't. Some might look at you and throw a chair. So it just kind of depends on the child. But
what if you've done all that and it's still not working?
yeah, and so then I would wonder more about the specific child, like what's going on. If those things aren't working, if you are trying those kinds of things a month, 2 months, it takes kids about 300 repetitions to learn something new, 1 to 3 months, and it's not working, something else is probably going on. Is there a mental health issue? Is it a sensory issue? Is it that, on the pyramid, does the child need higher level of services? Is something else deeper rooted going on? Because those things should work, not every time. It's not a magic bullet or answer. I mean, someone would be rich if it was, but
they should work more and more.
Yes, and the point is that you're downloading the skills and the states in the kid. So eventually the kid, instead of digging in their feet, will say, I don't want to go today. I'm sad I have to go. I don't want to leave your classroom. And now they're naming it and saying it instead of throwing a chair. And so the hope is that, if they had the words to say it, they would be doing that rather than having this explosive behavior. And sometimes I think we say, just use your words. Well, some of the kids don't have words. They would use them if they had them. And so sometimes you have to say it for them. And that might feel awkward or weird, just saying it out loud. But then hopefully eventually you see them starting to do that to you. And it's more half and half. And then it's more them doing it. And then soon they're self-regulating more, which is what we want.
I caught myself doing that the other day. Use your words, and I went, wait, this is a 1-year-old. And I stopped immediately and got down and went, okay, let's talk about it. Let's give you some words to use. I'm like, oh, idiot.
Yeah, I think
We got to
a lot of
remember
us
where
do
we're
that.
at, what we're doing.
Let's go there. Let's go with Todd's. Let's talk about Todd's that don't have words, that we're talking about labeling their feelings and describing what they're doing and how do we tolerize that?
Another language there.
Yeah, so let's talk about a toddler that's maybe in a biting phase or in a pushing phase or realizing they're pretty physical or waiting for you to look at them so that you can see them step on the infant. You know, with their foot deliberately. That's a little bit of a shift.
That's an alert that, hey, you need to get down there and be with them and find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
How are we going to communicate to that child?
Yeah, and I think, you know, we're still going to do all of the labeling and the naming because they are acquiring so much language during that time anyway. We want to be doing that. But the important word in there was doing. We want to not only model, but do with them. So, you know, gentle hands, showing them gentle hands, any kind of action you can have them do. Just saying sorry is not very effective oftentimes, especially with that age.
I don't even use that.
Yeah, unless it's part of, you know, hugging them. What can you do? Let's check in with, you know, the baby's crying, they're upset, you hurt them. Can we go down and check, rub their hand, like having them be a part of checking in, because even at that age, they're starting to develop empathy around 2.5, 3. So the more we can help them see and notice what happened on the victim or the child they hurt, and then be a part of the healing, and, you know, attending to the victim first, I guess, too.
But you're modeling, so they're learning how to address a child that is crying, that is hurting. So that's a lot of that. We're modeling physically and with words, and because, like you said, they're a sponge. They're
Right.
absorbing so much. They're getting their words.
Yeah, and doing it with them. So, you know, you might have to take their hand. You might have to take their arms and put them around to let them feel a hug, because it's that motor muscle memory kind of stuff that takes a lot of practice for them to learn what that feels like. And you never know what the family is like at home. Do they not give hugs? Does everyone, you know, well off and hit each other? I mean, and so they really may need actual physical practice to learn some of that.
And then with toddlers, I had to teach them not to hug because they're top heavy and they go over when they
They do go over.
So we do this. Are you okay? And they touch and they feel and they go, you know, don't hug them around the neck and choke
Big
them.
squeeze, big choke out.
Yeah. So, and the patting makes a whole lot more sense for them.
We have one that like repeatedly does it, like even though like we're like, don't do that, it's not safe. Like she thinks it's funny and like waits to get our attention and does it again. And like I feel at home she does get the attention, but I think they kind of like just push it aside maybe and just like, oh, she's acting up, just let her.
What is she doing?
She's one. Who cares? Yeah, she like so she tries to like step on the babies and goes and like wakes them up or like pulls a passy out of their mouth. Even though like she doesn't really get it anymore. So I don't know if she still wants it. And Mom was saying like during dinner time, like her brother's like, Mom, just make her stop. And so I think they kind of just like put her aside and just, okay, let her do what she's gonna do. Because like she just constantly wants a reaction out of us and just waits until like we see what she's doing and then does it, and then like she'll do it again after we're like, no, Joe, and like we'll set her aside to a different area.
Yeah, but she does the same thing when she's in the toddler room too.
Yeah.
I mean, she's
Even to the older ones?
well, she doesn't take pacifiers away,
But
but
she
she will take their toy.
Pushes their,
She'll take their toy. She'll push them aside. She's
wow.
a bully.
She's a director.
She's a director.
She's a director.
She makes sure she has your attention pretty much at all times.
She's a
doesn't care-
15-month-old director.
She doesn't care if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
She does not care if you are praising her because she's doing something good, or if she's being mean and gets in trouble.
All right, so how do we communicate with this kiddo?
Do you feel like it's attention seeking or lack of skills?
Both.
Well,
It's both. She's very much babied at home, I feel. Which we tried moving her up to the toddler room when we've got room to get her away from the little babies that can't defend themselves. And it's almost like she's trying to figure out how she fits in with the older kids because she's no longer the boss, but doesn't care that she's little. She's still going to push them around. So I mean, she wants the attention, but at the same time, they don't know how to play together. She doesn't know how to go up to the other kid. She takes her toys and hits them with them and thinks it's funny. And it's just at the point with her, she's not in the toddler room enough
yeah, she's
that
kinda
she's
in
getting the
between.
full on consistency.
Right.
But I really don't think she's getting a lot of it at home either. I really, like you said, oh, she's fine. Just let her go do her own thing. She's only one.
Right, it's because some of that sounds developmental and some of it sounds like it's teetering on that's works for her. And so as you see her get in the next few months up to 18 months, you'll probably see more of that. But when she does that, then are you having her take the toy back to the person, touch them? I mean, it's like just the little stuff every single time, or do you do it just like 1 out of 5 times because she does it so often? Because then it's still working for her.
Right. It's still working. We work, well, I don't know exactly what you do, but I will have her give the toy back.
Mm-hmm.
Try to give the child a hug, pet them on the arm, show them nice, because we do show nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so she'll smile, she'll touch them, but I'm giving her full one-on-one attention the whole time I do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's other times where I say, okay, if I ignore it and just kind of remove you, see if you can play over here and leave this kid alone, is it going to make a difference? It'll take her attention away for a couple minutes and then she's right back where she was. So, I mean, I don't have her full time yet to know exactly what.
Yeah.
But it's enough that, I mean, she's
it's
an issue
about
in both
50-50,
rooms because
like
we
if
don't
you
know
remove her,
what to do.
it just like depends like what the situation was, what she did. So like usually if she does take a toy, we're like, no, you have to share, give that back. But like sometimes it's that child was like hurt, so then like we just remove her for that moment and then like console that one child.
That's great.
Well, and there's other times too in my room, and you're almost always giving 2 hugs. One to the victim and one to the abuser.
Right.
And you are giving 2 hugs because both of them need to calm down before you can talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
But with some of them, one of the things that stuck out last time was when they're in that brainstem area, you treat them like half their age.
Mm-hmm.
I can't treat my kids like they're 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly how. I mean, that makes total sense with my kids. I'm like, you know what, that I can do that. But with the toddlers, I don't know exactly how to put that in perspective. But what you said there has stuck.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to fit it with 1-year-olds.
When I've had that problem, I glue them to me for a while.
Oh yeah, I make them be my hand buddy.
Away from
we walk around. They don't get to play with the other kids. I mean, sometimes they're looking. Other times they are so excited that they actually have even if I ignore them, that they have my contact. That as soon as I ask them, are you ready to be nice? Let's go show so-and-so nice hands. They'll do it, smile, and then realize, wait a minute, you left me. I'm going to do this again.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like it's defeating the whole point.
It's a lot of that age too. I think one of the cool things about kids is, I can't remember where I read this, but it takes about 300 repetitions for them to learn something, but 20 through play. And so some of those skills that they're missing, if you ever have a chance to sit down and play with them to make them a little more explicit, she might learn it faster or catch on faster. So any kind of games you can play where your turn, my turn, like stacking blocks, your turn, my turn, or if you have kids with frustration tolerance, purposefully knocking it over, and your play with them, because they can be mean all they want to you. It's kind of safer than having them constantly in pure conflicts, and trying to teach them some of those frustration tolerance, or try again, or oh, you're so mad because it fell down, let's try again and build it together, teamwork. And even with kids that young, you can kind of start, because you can again name it, and while it may not seem like it's sticking in, one day it will, and you'll be really surprised that you have a full day with
that word will pop out. It's
that.
like, oh,
Yeah, and I mean, you have a lot. You all have a tough job too, because if none of that's happening at home, and you're trying to do the bulk of that here, that might even make it take a little bit longer.
So then, like, at that point, I mean, so, and how would you communicate with the parents then and be like, hey, without them feeling like they're not, you know, because I mean, we do need that consistency with the parents, and because we can't all do it
by yourself,
you know, and then when they go home and they don't have, it's kind of setting them back. So how do we like talk without them feeling like we're, you know, being demeaning or like that they're not doing their, you know, because because we just, you know, we need help too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how would you kind of like go about that?
I would always approach with just curiosity. So
Right.
I would just always say, I'm wondering if you're seeing, or this crazy thing's been happening, and I don't know, could you tell me if you're seeing it at home? What do you do at home for this? So I think with curiosity, if you can try to always be curious about how you're asking things, that comes off less judgmental. And then I think they're more open to tell. And then sometimes you get a lot more information, I think, than if you just go at them and say, this is what we're seeing and we're doing this. What do you think? Because then they're going to think, oh, is what I'm doing wrong then? Because you're doing something different and now I don't want to share with you.
Yeah.
That sounds good. You keep doing that, and then they're going to go home and keep doing what they're doing. And so the more open-ended, curious, non-judgmental ways you can ask things, and then once they give you information,
And
then you
like,
can say,
hey, maybe,
oh,
and then
okay,
kind of suggest,
yes.
like, after.
what do you think about this? Or I'm doing this. Do you think that will work with your child? I always say, you know, you're the expert on your child. You know your child best. Though you guys know your children really well too. I mean, you have them a lot, so.
It's nice too to, like, once you give, you know, that kind of feedback with those types of parents and that type of situation, follow up with we tried this over the last 4 days and it's been working, and sometimes you'll get the parents saying, hey, we'll have to try that at home. So it feels more like teamwork, like you're both on the same team versus you know, us versus them type of feeling.
So I feel like sometimes that happens too with parents that spank and you can't spank here, and so then do you have those conversations with parents where you're like, well, what do you do when X happens? Oh, I just spank them. And you're like, okay, great.
Wow. Or they say, I just sent them to their room.
Yeah, that too. Problem solved. Gone. Out of sight, out of mind.
But to follow up with something positive, you know, hey, we found something that works, and or you know, please let us know if you find something that works at home, and let us know, and we can possibly implement that same thing in the classroom.
Yeah, that's
so the child's getting a double dose of whatever.
Like the arguing back for the school agers, can I use a bar of soap, or is that something that's allowed? I mean, because it occurred to me today. Was my kid Is that 20 times 2? Oh, you look so nice. Swim. Is that nice? We do it in play. It was an accident.
One way.
But getting back to her and her issue, I mean, she's still in that classroom.
Does
that mean that this child just really needs that affection, that extra from the teacher, because maybe they're not getting it somewhere else, and we're just going to have to keep them glued to us for, you know, a month or so until they are feeling real confident?
I think they're the trickiest children, though, when they seek out negative and positive attention. Neither one of them, it doesn't matter to them. They seek out both. Those are the hardest kids to figure out.
And so you know it's going to be a tougher road with this kiddo. One of the biggest things that I just heard was, hold on a second, you said child learns things about after they participate about 300 times. And then I heard a shortcut. Did y'all hear the shortcut?
That's the first thing I heard.
However, they could learn the same behavior through play 20 times.
Hallelujah.
I'm always about working smarter than harder. You know it's going to be a tougher road with this one. So let's stage more play in a way that's going to help them understand nice hands. That's going to help them understand personal space. That's going to help them to understand empathy, to understand safe play. Let's stage it. Either that, or we can get there through that 300 road system, right? So you may have to, it's just like the beginning of school, where if you work harder at the beginning of school to set the stage, to set expectations, and it's a lot easier to let them just throw their dishes in the tub. It takes more time to stop what you're doing, walk over there and show them how to stack their cup, how to set down their plate. So challenging behavior, you know it's going to be a tougher road. Take the shortcut, which will cost you more at the beginning, staging play, staging opportunities for them to learn.
Or the skills, an idea, even with down to 2-year-olds, even toddlers, some of the deep breathing, like the pretzel unconscious discipline, bilateral crossover, so you teach them how to do this and then take a deep breath. If you implement that throughout your day, then when they're starting to escalate, and you'll start to see them use those skills on their own when they really need them. Because when you really need them, you're like, oh, I haven't done any of that the last week or two, then it's not going to be there for them. You haven't downloaded that skill into them. They have to practice it a lot when they're calm. And so the deep breathing stuff, kids they really love that. The walking, any movement and deep breathing to calm down. If you have a kid that needs to pace, kind of getting back to your how do you half the age for a toddler, what you're thinking is regulating rhythm and movement, because that's how we regulate a 6-month-old. We use more touch, we use more eye contact, and so not so much that you treat them like a 6-month-old, but that you would regulate them with some of the same tools. So more eye contact, you might rock them, you might pick them up and swing them, or pace, or show them how to dribble a ball or tap on the table. Anything that's rhythmic helps their nervous system calm down. And so if you can try to think of things that you can teach even the toddlers, there are some things they can do. Rocking, I don't know if you have chairs in here or any of those boards, those like semi-half boards, but if you rock with them, then eventually when they get upset, they can go to the board and rock themselves when they're upset. So those kinds of
I think that, like personally, in our classroom, we really put the footwork in at the beginning of the year, and we're doing all that stuff, and we're, because we're introducing toys and centers before we put everything out for free play. But I feel like we get so busy with other stuff throughout the school year, some of that gets lost. And I think the revisiting a lot of that is important, and I think that that's why you say, it's like, and then my frustration kicks in. It's like, I worked so hard at the beginning of the year. You should know this by now. We've been, and we've done it heard me say that to the kids, which is probably way above their heads. Like, I did all this work. We've been in this classroom for how many months now? But then I think all of that frustration would go away. Just, okay, we're going to forgo our small group today. We're going to forgo activities today. Right now, what this classroom needs is to play. We need to sit down and just play with them. And I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but I feel like we're so busy, like, got to get this activity and got to
you
prep
gotta read
this,
the
and we
room.
got to, do all these academics. And really, you should just get down and play with them. And so,
I
take
love
the
the
time to
book
do that.
Let Them Be Little. Basically, it's that in a nutshell, that's what our kids need for brain development and to be school ready, but we get so busy in the refrigerator art and crafts and the expectations that parents have and all the activities we have to do that we lose some of that free play, and that's when we really connect with our kids and they learn these skills. So
especially at the holidays, when you try to get parent
oh
gifts
my
and
goodness,
blah, 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 blah,
which
blah,
parents
blah.
love that. I love getting that stuff. I love the refrigerator art. It's cute.
This is cute.
But I think some of that, putting the work up front for the children who have attachment needs, who have attention, I think that's true for that too. So, for example, if you have a kid like that who every time they come in the morning, this kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning, but you get down on one knee, you ask them one thing about their night last night, you say, hey, how's it going? Some kids, I know, I just suggested to a teacher they have like a special handshake because that makes him feel special in the morning. They do this special little handshake and greet each other, and she's down on his level. And after you do that and do that and do that, or intentionally make promises, little promises, and then keep your promises, that's another way. Like, I promise to sit next to you at lunch. I don't know if you guys eat lunch together in here. Little ones. Or I promise to share your favorite snack. Like, we both love peanut butter. I promise to bring in peanut butter crackers.
Peanut free.
Oh, that's right. No Twinkies. All the things I suggest are like, you can't do that in here. You can't bring that in here.
We don't sit with them. We don't eat with them. We don't. Definitely not peanut butter.
No peanut butter. Scratch all that. Do a handshake. And then as the year goes on, you can eventually just have eye contact with that student across the room, and that's enough to have them feel connected and calm down. So it's kind of the same premise, because we do have some of those kids I notice in a lot of the centers I'm in that it doesn't seem like their bucket can get filled. Like they just have such attachment needs, I guess. And so if you can do that work up front, it takes a little bit longer. And I sometimes hear teachers say, but I don't want to give this kid special attention. But that's having
so
individualized plans
Each
for
of them need
children,
that,
and they all have different needs. And so, you know, I think for some teachers it's about just processing, letting go of some of that guilt, or I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't do this. And you should,
Yeah,
if
but
it's,
even
if
expressing that to other kids, I mean, this is a little different subject, but like at mealtime when, you know, you have this child's allowed to take their, you know, if they take their no thank you bites, they can be done, and all the other kids are maybe asking for seconds. I don't know if that's the best example. All you have to do is say, you know, to preschool age children, we all have different plans in here. This is the plan that we have for so and so, and they immediately stop.
Yeah.
or circle time
Mm-hmm.
issues. If you have a kid who needs to sit on something or fidget with something, try and explain that to preschool kids. You know, all kids are different. We all have different ways that help us focus and learn, and this is how Joey learns so well in class, so we're going to let him do this. Works for him. But I think some teachers have a hard time with that conversation too. I've been asked that. How do I explain this to the rest of the kids that he gets a special chair?
That's a good example.
don't.
We do have a special chair, and when it was introduced to the classroom, it was just kind of, and it is still kind of left out. Kids get opportunities to kind of go and explore it and check it out, but they know whose it is now, and they're like, Miss Shannon, can you get so and so's chair? You know, and then they all and they know where it goes, and they will sit, or you know, or they'll ask, is so and so here today? And then they'll sit there, but they know when he's here, then the chair goes there. But it's just a familiar item to everybody, but they know whose it is as well.
We've just
I
talked
think we
about
just
it.
talked
It's
about
just-
it a
yeah,
lot at
right.
the beginning with both of those. It's two different kiddos we were kind of talking about, but we just said, you know, they have a different plan, and they eventually said, okay, and they were fine,
Yep.
Right.
and they don't have a problem
I
with
love
it.
that.
Yeah, I think kids actually do better with that kind of thing than adults do.
Yeah.
We're so trying so hard to make it all level and even
Yeah.
that you go, wait, this one needs this and this one needs that, and it's okay to be treating a child special because they're all special.
Because
I mean,
all of our kids need
Yeah.
different things. They have
Exactly.
different needs. They
yeah, don't take that away from them because you're trying to.
You're
be
right, and
equal.
parents walking into something like that might see it
Oh,
through an adult's eyes and
Yeah.
go, well, why, and so and so, and you know.
Exactly.
So then you have to say, we have different plans for different
If you don't like it.
So what we just kind of talked about was, you know, the hard work we put at the beginning of the school year, which a lot of that is behavior focused, is you know, let's set a foundation of expectations of behavior, and then we're talking about needs of the kids, feeling safe, feeling fed, what have you, and so what I'm hearing a lot is that maybe if we gotta be careful we don't lose that, and get caught up in portfolios, and get caught up in, okay, now we need to be moving to the last name, you know, to write, because we expect you to write your first and last, and be careful not to get caught up in so much of the academics. Always be willing and just plan ahead. Maybe every 3 months I'm going to start over, and based on where my kids are, I might spend 15 minutes on breathing techniques, you know, and then the second quarter, 3 months later, I might spend 10 and then 5, because now it's just reminding them what that behavior looks like, or that muscle memory, reteaching that. But structuring your school year, your 12 months with, hey, let's make sure we're revisiting these things that are going to help the kiddos emotionally feel safe, feel loved.
So, this is kind of jumping more into the extreme cases, which gladly we haven't had in a while. And I think talking about a kid who does have a sudden outburst, or throwing chairs, or kicking and screaming. Personally, being a male teacher, for me it's always been a very scary thing of them saying, Mr. David hit me, Mr. David grabbed me. And that's why I really thank for the cameras, because I mean, we had that a couple of months ago. Kids no longer here said, I'm going to tell my mom you hit me, I'm going to tell my mom this and that. And it almost like it scared me to death. I'm like, what if this mom believes it? What if the cameras weren't out there looking at the whole thing? Where would I be? if we have a situation where a child has those outbursts where we have to be careful with touching them or, you know, trying to calm them down, what would be the best way to verbally calm them down? Or is it better just because, I mean, even we had another child who, as soon as we stepped away, started scratching her arms and saying, "Stop hurting me." And it was one of those things where this kid's gonna go home with scratches on the arm. Yeah. And I mean, I'm like, I don't want this kid to go home and has scratches all around. What happened to my kid? Oh, your kid just scratched himself in the corner because he was mad. I'm like, it's so what's the best way to verbally calm a kid down? Because I mean, I know we have to be cautious where we can't restrain a kid.
Touching.
What would be the best way, or what are some best techniques? I know we talked about breathing techniques, and I know we talked about, you know, pretzels, but I mean, when you do have a kid at that last stage of outburst.
Yeah. When they're that escalated, obviously talking to them is not effective. And I would even go out on a limb and say, for the children that you described, I'd be curious about their past experiences. Stress at home or trauma, or I mean, some of that's so deeply ingrained where no matter what you say, positive or not, is not going to be heard because they kind of have this template of I'm bad, I'm unlovable, nobody likes me, you don't like me, you don't care about me kind of thing. And so that's really, you're really getting into a lot of mental health and treatment kind of stuff. But I would say no touching, no rocking, none of that. But you're going to try to identify for that child, and I hope their therapist, if they have one, what their individual plan is. Because for like kids who are scratching or harming themselves, they typically have some sort of safety plan for triggers. And even little kids, we make safety plans with for triggers and what you can do to calm down, so that there might be some sort of mantra that works for them that you say to them over and over. You're safe. You're safe. I'm right here and I'm not going anywhere. You're safe. I'm just going to wait right here. And you might say something like that over and over until they calm down. But if they're that escalated, you can name their feelings as fine and naming what's going on for them. But I mean, you're not going to say like, and you're scratching yourself. And I mean, obviously, you're safe and I'm going to be right here when you're ready, because there's not much more really you can do that. In a residential treatment setting for kids doing that, they would, have some restraints so that they don't hurt themselves, and you can't do that. So, I mean, I would hope if you have those kids that their service providers are working with you on that, because that puts you in a interesting situation.
Exactly.
But what is their plan? So, I mean, for them, do they need to go to the cozy corner, whatever you call it? Do they, when they go in spaces, do they feel safer so they don't cut? What helps that child feel safe? Is it a blanket? Is it a transitional object? Is it like what for them works that you can remind them, you're safe, I'm calm, I'm here for you. When you're ready, let's move to the corner. And you can kind of remind them of what works for them.
So part of what we have to remember too is that we need to recognize what we're able to do for a child that's really struggling, and maybe recognize a child that's struggling beyond what our classroom environment is capable of providing for them. And so if you have a child that in a residential treatment center, when they're scratching themselves, they recognize this child right now needs to be restrained and contained to keep themselves safe. We can't do that. We need to recognize that and then reach out for help. Reach out to directors, reach out to owners, and then reach out, and then we need to reach out to the community and figure out how we partner to get services for this child. And the first thing we have to do is get parents on board.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, we want to be good at knowing what services are available out there. But first and foremost, recognizing we have a child that's really, his needs may exceed what we can provide within the classroom. So,
and
if you don't have a therapist, let's get them one.
Right,
so where do
and
we
you
go?
have to feel safe too. So I mean, if you need to walk away, I'm not a proponent of timeouts unless the adults need them, or if you just need to take a step away, like this is crazy. I mean, that's healthy and good, and if you can name that for the child too. You guys are gonna get so tired of me saying name it. Like this is a lot. You're safe. I'm gonna walk away and take some deep breaths because this is a lot. And just name what you're feeling and what you're experiencing and how you're calming down. And if you need to walk away, and because if they're saying, you know, hit me, come, or trying to provoke you to do that, show them what happens in a healthy relationship. You're provoking me. I'm starting to feel myself getting anxious, or this is, and, you know, I'm gonna walk away and take a deep breath. I'll be back in a minute when I'm calmed down. Well, I don't know how much you can do of that, you know, in a room.
As long as they're in.
I mean, give them some amount of space.
Yeah.
But if you have a child like physically, I mean, you're not going to go too far away from that child who's scratching themselves.
No, you're not, and you're not going to wait very long before you reach out for additional help.
Yeah,
Or
you
call
definitely
mom.
want like
I mean, I'd be
somebody
calling a
else,
parent right away.
a witness to that.
Yeah, I'd be calling a parent right away. I'm not saying in a classroom. Well, at least we have cameras, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I'm still calling a parent to say, I have got this going on and this is serious. I don't know what triggered. I don't understand what's going on. Here's the leading up behavior, but I think I need some help. I need you here now. I mean, there's no reason not to call a parent when something like that goes down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we dealt with a lot with, you know, one kid in our classroom, and I feel like we gave it our best effort, but, you know, ultimately the decision we made and the help that we got, I feel very good about. But all of us, we have to keep our classrooms safe, we have to keep our kids safe, and we have to keep ourselves safe. And, you know, when it gets to a certain point, we have to reach out and get those kids help, and if it's outside our facility, then that's what we do.
You bet.
There's only a certain amount we can do within our facility. Even if we have outsiders coming into the facility to help, sometimes that's still not enough. They've got to go outside of our facility to ultimately get what they need to get better.
It definitely seems like there's an increase in those kids with challenging
There is.
behaviors from what I've heard, and the research is showing like 20% of kids now. So if you have a classroom of 20 kids, instead of having just 1 or 2 kids once in a while, you're having 4 or 5 that are struggling with mental health issues and the ACEs we talked about, and that's a lot for you guys too.
The severity seems a little bit increased as
A
well.
lot more
It's not
anger,
just
a lot more
minor.
anxiety.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, as like, you know, center owners, it's, you know, I think it is good to, you know, and healthy to say, hey, this might not be the facility for your child. I mean, and here are a list of, you know, there's smaller settings, there's in-home settings, they're giving them options, you know, that this isn't the only thing out there. And just because you bring your child here and, you know, we're profiting from that, we're not going to not tell you that this is, you know,
Not
the only place there is
ultimately the
out
best
there.
place.
Yeah.
Such a good point. Goodness of fit. I think that's important.
Yeah, and we need to thank you for running a center that supports us in all through this kind of stuff, because
For sure.
Absolutely.
it would be insane to be in a center and not have that support. You know, if you do have to walk away,
You
there's
can't.
always a teacher that's going to
Not
step
in this
for
day and
you.
age. Not in this day and age.
But you guys are special.
Yeah,
We
you have
appreciate
to
it.
have that. That support's got to be in place.
Yeah.
It just has to.
That was really the premise of the early childhood mental health consultants all across Colorado. Really isn't to come in and have the answers for challenging kids. It's just to support you guys. So really our purpose is just to hang out in classrooms. Sometimes my job seems too great to just come in and build relationships with you guys and just be an ear. Just, man, that 15-month-old is tough, and just like be with you with that until they grow out of it, until you see the fruits of like your labor of it working. It's just to support you guys because you have such a difficult job and it's so important.
So, go ahead.
Kind of backtracking to what David was saying, but as a 1-year-old level, what is normal if there is developmental self-hurt? I mean, we have some kids that like bite themselves, scratch themselves. I mean, the head banging. I mean, I've seen it with so many kids, but it's like brief. I mean, and then there's others that do it more often. When is it a concern that needs to be more than just a let's move see what he does? When do I need to be worried about
when
it?
you feel like it's impacting their development? Is it impacting their ability to have relationships with peers?
Well, the one I'm thinking of, it's a rough home life. We've known that from the time we've started. And it's, I mean, the times I've noticed more of the head banging is he's sitting there and he's smiling as he's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know if he's in a rush, if he's getting himself ready to go on with the rest of the kids because he can't keep himself focused.
Is he a sensation seeker? Does he typically?
Right, that's
It could be
kind of how I feel.
self-soothing, which that might be concerning too. It might not though.
Right, I mean, and then he's the one that I try to figure out how to treat him young, because, I mean, he's almost 2, but he's more of like a 1-year-old level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how do I help him when he is technically 2, acts 1, needs 6-month help. I mean, I'm at a loss. I mean,
right.
I think I hear you saying that you do think it's an issue. So you've been watching
Well,
it for.
I mean, it's come and goes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. There's sometimes you'll go a couple weeks without doing it, and the next thing you know, he's sitting in one corner pretty much.
Which makes
and
me
just
think
doing
coping
it,
skill
and then
or
there's other
self-soothing.
kids that'll come over. Oh, that looks like fun, and start doing it.
Right. Oh, that way that's not fun.
Oh, right.
That hurts.
So
Why are you doing that?
You stop it, you get him distracted. The other kids don't do it, and he finds his corner
Yeah.
and goes right back over
I
there.
would be curious about stressors at home. Is what I would be
I mean,
curious about.
I don't even know how to approach parents with him, and it's.
So let's answer that by not answering that, and let's finish tonight with this. You talked about mental health specialists and what their role is. Talk a little bit more about that, and then talk about the resource that you can be for us.
Yeah.
Because the answer to this might not be what you can muster in the next 5 minutes. It might be,
Yeah.
how about I spend some time in your classroom,
Right.
which is a service that you can provide.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe that's the answer. So let's talk about not just you, but mental health specialists in general, and then let's talk about you and how we access you and what different kind of ways we can do it. And you've touched on it briefly.
Yeah.
Let's finish with that.
So it's really to support you guys and to support parents and connect to services. So there are basically 3 ways I can support providers and teachers. It's child specific. If you have a specific child, I think we almost did that in the center.
Mm-hmm.
And we do an assessment on the child, and I meet with parents, and we meet every month, and we have staffings, and it's just for that one kiddo, and I come in and observe the kiddo. We can do classroom center, where I just come in and kind of hang out in the classroom. That's really what the grant was hoping for, is that you just go to classrooms and you would build relationships. That way, if I'm in your classroom every Tuesday morning, you would say, hey, what do you think about this behavior I'm seeing from this kid? And we could kind of talk about it and monitor it together. And then program focused is offering trainings or help with policies and whatnot. So there are 3 levels to that. And all you would need to do, it's free, is just call me. So if you have a specific kiddo you want me just to look at, your intake paperwork says you have people observing sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you could just call me, call my cell phone, call the office and say, could you just come out and hang out Tuesday morning and tell me what you think about this kid? So brief consultation, I can do that. I have a lot of centers do that for early intervention services. They say, come out and tell me if you think this kid's really 2, or if we need to talk to parents about a referral. So sometimes I do that, mental health or developmental needs. Or, and then if we think it needs to, we should talk with this parent. We should do a child specific kind of issue. It can morph into that if it needs to, and if not, then it doesn't. So
remember, the classroom observation we do not need any written authorization from a parent. So we can have her come in at any time without notifying any parent to say, come in and observe our classroom. Keep an eye on this little one, but observe our classroom. We don't need permission. And so we can start with it. You can always start with that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, as Lisa said, if you decide, or she decides with you, goes, I see some needs, and we can escalate it and get the parents involved and see if she can set up a plan so that she can have individual contact, and that can go pretty deep as far as meetings in the home. It can do all kinds of stuff, and some parents will as we've seen in the past,
Yes.
have said, heck no,
No,
you're not
yeah.
coming to my
Yes.
home. I'm not telling you, about nightmares I had when I was 3 and all these kind of things. But we can start in the very least evasive way and partner with her to have her come out and observe and give you some ideas and help. And that's why she's here.
We can get really creative. I have some kids who have speech and occupational therapy, say at St. Mary's. And so I can attend their sessions or talk with their therapist and then bring back what they're working on in their sessions to you guys. So I try to bridge sometimes services, or a therapist. If a kid is having a therapist, I can facilitate some of those conversations with their mental health therapist and what we can do in the center. I have had quite a few who are preschool and childcare setting that seems to do better in the preschool setting, smaller classrooms, more structure, more individualized services in the classroom. And so sometimes I go and observe there and talk with all of them and try to bring back what they're doing that's working well. Just whatever, I don't want to say whatever you guys need, but I mean, really, you can, if you have a need, let me know. We can be creative.
Yeah, and if you have a need like yesterday, the fastest way to get her into the classroom is just have her come into a classroom setting. Just do a classroom observation. Because if you go, I am like at my wit's end with this little guy, I need you right now to do a one-on-one, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow, for sure, because there's got to be agreements with parents, and that could be a courtship that could take a little bit.
And sometimes parents will say no, but they have great relationships with you guys. So then what I'll do is I'll come in and keep an eye on a certain kid, and then I'll give you the resources, the numbers, the child therapist, the referral for early intervention. I'll have you kind of be the mouthpiece for that, and I just stay in the background, and that works well too. Just depends on the parent and the family.
You got it.
So that's it.
So this is just the beginning, the end of the beginning. Beginning of the end? It's the beginning.
But
What's the end for tonight? Yeah, but tomorrow's the new beginning.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going back for seconds. No.
Grab dinner for the kids.
Taking your kid home.